Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Jennifer. I'm the VP of Marketing here at Tune. I'm excited to have our 3 CMOs here with us at Postback. We've been hosting this CMO Connect series all around the world within the last couple of years, and it's been amazing to hear the insights and advice from leaders all across the country to hear how they advise on not only growing their business, but also deepening relationships with their connected customers. So to kick things off, I'm going to have each person introduce themselves and describe their role as a CMO at their company. So Kieran, do you want to go first?
Well, firstly, hello everybody, afternoon. I've taken the tenets of the event to heart, and so thanks to my Tune bag, what do I have in here? Let me see what, oh, lovely. Cheers, everybody. Afternoon.
Cheers.
With that, I'm Kieran Hannon. I'm the CMO of Belkin International. We have 4 brands in the Belkin portfolio. Belkin, peripherals and accessories, Linksys in networking, Wi-Fi, Wemo in the smart home space, and then our 4th brand called Phyn, P-H-Y-N, in the water management space. So I have the lovely pleasure of being very involved in all of those brands, helping lead them through the various stages of their growth and phases, and I manage all the global marketing in e-commerce for the company.
Great.
And cheers.
You didn't bring any to share.
No, I went to a store up the street and they only had one, the last one I found in the back. I really had to dig hard for this Guinness.
It's yours, it's yours. I'm Leigh McMillan. I'm with ReachNow, which is the mobility services division, if you will, of the BMW group. Most people know it as car sharing, but we recently launched a ride-sharing pilot, and there will be additional mobility services moving forward. We are available in Seattle, Portland, Brooklyn, and soon other cities across the country. And so my team is responsible for growing our membership base across all of the cities and bringing the new services out, so go to market with our new mobility services while obviously living up to the BMW Ultimate Driving Machine brand.
My name is Broderick, and I live in between Portland and Seattle, so I take ReachNows all the time, so I'm really excited to be on stage with you and drive BMWs, even though I ought not to. I am the CMO at Simple, which is this rad little tech company that's trying to take on a really broken industry in America called banking, which many of you have to deal with whether you want to or not. So we're trying to make that a more pleasant experience.
Awesome. So I guess let's first kick things off. I think I heard a little bit of the intro from John. The most difficult role at a company has always been expressed as the CMO. Can we talk a little bit about how you manage delivering first on the revenue side to grow your business, and then also balancing that with delivering on your brand promise? Michelle, do you want to go first?
Sure, I'd love to. I think that's kind of a false equation that you have to decide between if you want to deliver on revenue or deliver on brand. If you're doing that, you're actually making some suboptimal choices, and you're either saying, I want to wait for the long term to do something, or I want something now, now, now. And that would be the way a child would make a decision, but as a CMO, we really need to rise up and say, how would I make a long-term decision that will actually get me more revenue in the short term? What can I do that makes noise, makes people say, wow? And it just takes a little bit of a scrappier mentality. So I think whenever anybody offers me that false dichotomy, I reject it right out of the gate, and we try to come up with a better solution.
So for me, I think that's a great answer, Michelle. I concur. I think the role has changed in a lot of ways. I think back to 4 or 5 years ago, and I'm looking at budgets and so forth, less than 5% of our budget was spent on platforms that today we're now nearly spending 40% on. And so when you think about that, what am I talking about? I'm talking about the rise of e-tail and the importance not only from a purchase standpoint, but also from a content standpoint. Amazon today, over 2/3 of all searches in the CE space, consumer electronics space, starts in Amazon, not Google. So for me, content is very, very important. The ratings, we spend a lot of time on the ratings and what they mean from users, the reviews and the feedback in the reviews. So again, is that looking after the brand for the long term? Is that a short-term sale? I think it's all above. It's mutually inclusive, not exclusive. So again, you're looking to optimize everything. Hate that word, sorry to have used it, but really fixing everything so it is doing what it's supposed to be doing, and you're moving all boats forward.
Yeah, and for us, since it's a service that lives under a pretty well-known brand, for us, delivering on that service and delivering a good customer experience is the strongest way that we can build brand. And so the things that we would actually do to deliver a fantastic customer service are also the things that drive revenue. So improving the sign-up process, improving the experience when the member gets in the car, fixing app problems. Those are the things that support the brand. When it comes to spending, it's a constant balance. We have a formula that we try and look at every quarter to determine how much are we going to spend on things that would traditionally be known as brand advertising versus other parts of the funnel. And sometimes I think we get it right and sometimes we don't. Particularly when we're entering new cities, obviously we have to make a bigger investment in brand. And then on an ongoing basis, it's kind of a challenge to figure out the balance. And so I look for advice from people like Michelle on how we would do that.
Could you share a little bit more in your instance where ReachNow is a brand of or associated with BMW, is that right?
Correct.
So do you leverage the BMW brand at all to boost the profile of ReachNow?
So we do in a couple of different ways. Obviously, generating national press. BMW is very well known. Press likes to talk to them. And so as opposed to talking to little ReachNow when we want to be in the New York Times, we become BMW Group. So we're very happy to have that opportunity to leverage that. And then obviously the cars are an expression in itself. But honestly, at times, and we're still figuring this out, we have to forge our own path because we're not selling cars. And so if you look at BMW Creative in their advertising, for example, it has a very specific purpose. That is to provide air cover and build the BMW brand for dealers, whereas we're the first division at BMW that actually has to sell directly to a consumer. Consumers engage with us directly, pay us money directly, and so we have to forge our own path there in developing the brand. And sometimes that can be involve discussions with the folks at BMW to make sure we're not pushing against it too much, but at the same time establishing our own identity. It's a challenge, a good one, a fun one, frankly.
Yeah, and I think you've actually spoke to a little bit of the complexity today, but one thing that I always believe is marketing is about making the complex simple. And our world is becoming more and more complex today with multiple channels popping up, attention spans growing shorter, new ways to be able to really make a memorable moment that connects with your audience. I'd be curious to hear a little bit more on how you think about really simplifying your marketing and focusing on what's important first.
Wow, that's the million-dollar question. I'll give you an example of something we're doing. Going to be a little oblique for obvious reasons, but when we think about the role of recommendations and influencing the influencers, we recognize in order to capture their attention can be quite hard, right? In the day-to-day world, they're bombarded with a lot of messaging, both at their corporate level, training programs and so forth. We have done programs quite successfully where through geofencing, we can recognize people that are within proximity of a certain physical space, leave it at that, and we can understand kind of what their relationship with that physical space is. And with that, then we're able to target them with relevant messaging about our brands. And what does that mean? For instance, I'll give you an example. In a 4-week window, we had over 100,000 unique engagements with this program. And one example was the average viewing period of our video was 58 seconds, about 350% above the norm that you would expect, because it was very relevant, it was very timely, it was right within the mindset of where they were at that point in time, and the proximity of that location. So we kind of tied it all together, and it was an aha moment for them. So that's an example of, through complexity comes simplicity, is kind of really what really counts and when does it count?
Well, I actually have a very strong point of view on this because I would say first and foremost, if you want to make something simple, go ahead and get the domain name simple.com, which we did. We put our entire name behind the concept that you're talking about. So our entire brand promises that we're going to make something extremely complex simple. And I always look to outside of our industry for inspiration on how to do this. Business isn't actually the best way to look at how to make something simple. It's just not really the thing that business people are known for. So the person who I actually take inspiration from is Julia Child. She talks about the difference between simple and easy. And so something that's easy often gets mistaken for simple. But to make something simple is actually incredibly complex, like a French pastry. It might only have 3 ingredients. That seems so easy. But in order for it to all come together perfectly and to rise and to have the perfect mouth texture, that is amazingly complex for you to have this simple pastry. And so I think about the care and concern that needs to go into building a brand in order to make it simple for the customer. So if we are the CMOs, if we are the chefs who are making what's happening in the back, the customer shouldn't have to know any of that. All they should get is this beautiful product on the front end. And so that's really how I try to think about making something that is incredibly complex simple, is really taking away the idea that it's going to be easy.
We think about things the same way. To have a technology that enables someone to unlock a car, reserve a car, sign up and get a background check, and then actually get in the car, technologically, it's very, very complicated, the communications that have to happen between the car. And we talk a lot internally about how can we simplify that process for people, recognizing it's not easy. It's not going to be one push the button once and get in the car. And so the thing that we challenge ourselves a lot on is how we communicate, how we talk, what's the language we use, and try every time that we are rolling out a new communications, whether it's an email or through the app itself, to deconstruct it and take extra time to go through how can we remove a step here? Does this sound the same way as it sounds when they get in the car? Can we make this email a third of the way shorter and still have people to understand it? Do we have too much in this communication? Should we step it out? And so we actually spend a lot of time to kind of similar to a recipe and think about, okay, let's step out of the box and get in the mind of our customer truly, 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 and does this really make sense? And then we look at other industries as well and how well, and our competitors, frankly, and how well they're communicating a complex concept.
One of the things we do, we have constantly people coming in. We've got our own qualitative facility on site, and we're vertically integrated. What that means, we've got all facets, engineering, every facet of engineering. We've got 3D model shops and so forth. So from a product all the way to the proposition, packaging, you name it, we're constantly doing research, iterating overnight, back in again the next day to really get to that point of simplicity, because if you're able to quickly deliver that, that's a huge aspect of the brand promise and brand support.
Yeah. And when you're kind of mentioning all of the research that you're conducting, and Leigh, you're kind of talking about all of the tests that you're running to know what's working and what's not to really connect with the audience, one of the keynote themes that we talked about this morning was the belief that all marketing should be measured on performance. So I'd be curious to hear if you could share a little bit more around what your marketing dashboard looks like. Like, what are you excited to really measure all of the success that you're generating for all of your campaigns?
Go first.
So to kind of give context to the KPI dashboard, you kind of have to know what stage we're at. Despite the fact that we have all kinds of data and things coming in, we're in a pretty early innings of the game in terms of measurement and understanding. So right now, our KPI dashboard is a lot of the basics through the funnel. Brand awareness in the different cities and affinity associated with it. Then we look at traffic to the App Store. We're 100% mobile, and so understanding how many people we're getting in the top of the funnel in the App Store. Then we look at installs, and then we look at how many people install, get through to completing their registration, and then how many of those people actually drive a car, and what's the time frame in between those steps. And then lastly, yes, we look at NPS. a lot. And there's a lot of different ways that we measure NPS. And so we're at the basics right now. And the one that I love to watch actually the most right now is brand awareness as we roll into new cities. And how do those cities think about us? How Portland thinks about us is very different than Seattle. And then I love cost per metrics. Cost per install, cost per drive, cost per everything. I love to look at those.
How does Portland think of you guys versus Seattle?
Oh.
Any fun stats to share?
Gosh, it is really fascinating. Portland is considered a pretty green city. I think in some circumstances more green than Seattle. But green does not trump, or sustainability does not trump convenience, even in Portland. And yet there is a kind of a little bit of pushing against corporate in Portland that does not exist here. So whereas we get a BMW halo here, a little bit less so in Portland, significantly less so, and then Brooklyn is a whole nother situation that we could talk about all day. But it's really fascinating to see the differences between the cities.
I bet you could write a book on that.
I should.
Yeah.
That, yeah.
So that's what we're going to do after this.
Yeah, exactly. We're
But
gonna
we'll
write a book.
answer Jennifer's question now. As far as metrics go, I think the one that I'm the most excited about at any given time is referrals, because that's really when you're turning your customers into advocates. And so if you don't have a strong and healthy referral flow, and instead you are supplementing with a lot of paid advertising because you're not able to get people to refer your product, you have to kind of wonder what is actually going on with your product. And so referrals are probably the first and foremost thing I look at. And the next thing we're trying to do right now is actually move away from just NPS and measuring something about how do we operationalize the brand. And so what are people saying in reviews on the App Store? Because that's actually really important. What is the social sentiment out there? How do we get a super early read of brand sentiment on a week-over-week basis so we can operationalize that back into our business?
For us, we obviously do a lot of similar work, real specific around the functional groups within marketing, within PR and social and so forth, e-com, web traffic. But at the highest level as an organization, our most important metric is actually Net Promoter Score as well. So we measure it very carefully at 3-day, 3-week, 3-month, and yearly. So we're constantly measuring Net Promoter Score. Then after that, really, it's actually the reviews, consumer reviews, the star rating, and the App Store rating. All of those, there's a direct correlation to the success of the business. We bring out about 400 new products a year, so a lot of MPIs as well. So again, you've got to, it's quite complex, but again, if you get down to those 3 or 4 key things, then you quickly understand the success of programs. Are there something that you should be worried about that you need to take a step back and revisit? So that laser-like, we tend to focus on a lot.
And something else that you all have actually mentioned so far is the concept of really delivering like the right message at the right time to the right person, being very people-centric minded. Be curious to hear kind of what campaigns or programs that you're excited about to really deliver a more personalized experience and engagement with your brand.
Well, for us, marketing is a broad term. Most of our products or brands all require an app to utilize it. So we really spend a lot of time in delighting people in those experiences. And we have quite a sizable UX team on board, a UX research team. So that's really where we like to spend our time, is how can we surprise and delight, not just when you buy a product and have the software at the beginning, how that evolves over time. One of the great examples with our Linksys product, we've just launched our new whole home Wi-Fi product, and we have some parental controls in there. And we got so much overwhelming feedback that people love the way it's been put together. Can they have even more and more features? And we're able to gauge, okay, that over some other type of feature, whether it's a kind of a VPN type feature. The audience, our consumers voted for us and said, no, we want more parental controls. So the next release of the app had more parental controls. So that in itself turns people into the advocates that you look for, and that's, for us, the most important win.
I can't really see any of you, but if anybody wants to woo the last time they were excited to get messaging from their bank. It's really not a thing that happens, and so we have to dig pretty deep in order to figure out how to do that. And the thing that we've really asked ourselves is, when we send out policies, there's a lot of policies that banks need to send out. We're regulated and have to do it. We ask ourselves, why are we regulated? Why do we have to do it? It really is in the consumer's best interest. And so instead of sending y'all just like a huge thing of legalese, we took a page out of our high school textbook where somebody would take Shakespeare and then put it into plain language. And we actually did that with our, it's called Reg E. I'm sure you're all extremely familiar with it because your bank sends it to you every single year, and you do not delete it. You read the whole thing. No, you don't. And so we decided to actually make this a celebration of Regulation E because it's actually really good for you and it's protected of your customers. And we got so much sharing on social, people forwarding it around, and like it was actually this really great thing that somebody's bank actually cared about them enough to explain why this was important to them. So we try to build empathy into even the most boring, can I swear, stuff.
Yeah, you can fucking swear.
My last name's Broderick.
Right, good, let's go.
Nice. So, fortunately, our members generally like to hear from us. But we take that responsibility and not to overdo it. And we're at the early stages of our CRM, building up our CRM program and capabilities. We're pretty pedestrian right now. And so, we're excited about just kind of figuring out about when's the right time to communicate different things. And we fortunately know a lot about y'all. If you drive ReachNow, we know generally where you like to go, whether you drive in the morning or in the afternoon. Do you use it for commuting? Do you use it for shopping and things like that? And so kind of figuring those things out from a surprise and delight standpoint, one of the things that folks do is take our cars for longer trips, so multiple day trips, which moves us in the category of competing with rental cars. And so if I think of something that's super fun, how can we surprise and delight against the rental car experience? So for example, if you go to get in the car and we know that you are taking the car to the coast for the weekend, what can we do for you that would make that experience better? And so I think surprise and delight is really the thing that we try and think about as well. And that's super fun to think about how to do that.
Awesome. Well, first, thank you for sharing a sneak peek of your life as a CMO. And for our last question, I would be curious to hear if you have a piece of advice for all of the future CMOs in our audience here.
I trust there's a lot of CMOs already in the audience, and so I think the one thing that I would say is try to be as well-rounded as possible when you become in charge of a lot of people who are really, really good at their individual jobs. The things that people are going to look to you for as a CMO is more of a gut check, more of what is the vision, what is the direction we want to do, how do we set these really large KPIs. And if you focus just on what made you really successful as a marketer, you're going to be a very small CMO. And so you're going to want to take inspiration from all of the very, very rich disciplines we have out there in the world. And so just really becoming a well-rounded person, I think, is the best thing to do to become a CMO.
I think in my experience, take the engineers and the QA folks out for drinks frequently. Make them your best friend, not only because they can help you deliver on things better and faster, but it is amazing the insights and ideas that they have that you never would have thought of. Their perspective is different, and they're, in my experience, incredibly excited to participate and to talk to you and to ask you questions. So love spending time with those folks.
I think that's great advice by both. So agree. For me, it's really building on both of those areas. I think continuing to keep that innate sense of curiosity. Never give that up. I think once you start to do that, become complacent, and that's the end. Really enjoy what you're doing, enjoy your consumers. I spend a lot of time interacting with our customers on social media. It's so much fun. You learn so much. So again, you lead by example, but really empower your teams to do the same thing. And back to the point, just spending time with the internal organization around the products, making sure you're delivering exactly what you set out to do, I think is the paramount overarching thing. And just be a good human. I think at the end of the day, that's the most important.
Perfect. All right, thank you again for joining us, and thank you all for joining us for this session today.
Cheers. Thank you, Jennifer.